Hi everyone and welcome to Unit 2. This presentation will serve as an introduction to the unit. We'll be focusing in this unit on coherence theories, specifically cognitive constructivist theories and social constructivist theories. What I would like to do in this presentation is introduce you to how coherence theories differ from correspondence theories, which is what you learned about in Unit 1 and specifically in Chapter 2 of the text. So one of the best ways I thought to simplify the ideas of correspondence and coherence theories was to focus on a specific object or specific example. So what we're going to do is focus on the cow, an everyday object for many people. So when I think of a cow, I could think of a whole bunch of things, but if I wanted to distill a cow and really think about what a cow is, I could say that a cow is a farm animal. If I wanted to get more specific, I could say that it's a large herbivore and a mammal. I might also say that a cow says moo. And if I wanted to get even more in depth, I could say that a cow is a ruminant. We know that cows have two stomachs to help them digest all of that grass. And when they eat the grass that is fueled in part by the sun, it generates protein. And so we would also say that a cow is a high protein source for people's diets. So with this understanding in mind, somebody who walks up and sees a cow might say, yep, that's a cow. And typically people would agree with that. Another person walks up and that person would say, yep, that's a cow, all right. However, even though we might say, oh, a cow corresponds to all of these different characteristics, right? A large herbivore, a mammal says moo, a farm animal, a ruminant, and is a high protein source, we might ask whether all people would understand a cow in the same way. So here's another image of a cow. And you can see the word down there in the bottom right corner of the image. So from this perspective, this is a photo that's taken in India. If I lived in India and if I were a Hindu, I might think of a cow quite differently. I might think of a cow as the highest form of life. I might also think of a cow as a higher caste, right? And really as the ultimate in reincarnation. I might think of divinity when I think of a cow. And by all means, I would not view a cow as a high source of protein, in that I would never eat beef. So what we can say here is that this view of a cow is very different from the view of a cow that I described previously. So what does this have to do with correspondence and coherence? Well, when we think of correspondence theories, the assumption is that the object, the cow, corresponds to the word, that whenever we say cow, everybody will know what we're talking about and will understand the cow in the same way. However, from a coherence theory perspective, that would not be the case. Okay? From a coherence theory perspective, there would be multiple ways of understanding a cow. And so here's one set of ways for understanding what a cow is, and here's another set of ways for understanding what a cow is. What this means is that somebody might walk up and consider a cow from that first perspective and say, yeah, that makes sense. But at the same time, a different person who lives in a very different context might note all of these other ways of understanding what a cow is. And to that person, that would make sense. So what this means in terms of coherence theories is that a cow, the word cow doesn't necessarily always correspond to the same things. Rather, how we understand a cow would cohere with our own way of understanding the world. So as somebody who lived on a ranch, perhaps in the western United States, and who was a carnivore, and not a Hindu, All of these ways, a cow being a large herbivore, a high source of protein, a ruminant, a farm animal, and something that says moo, would make sense. It would cohere with the way I understand the world and the way that I live my life. And at the same time, if I were a Hindu who lived in India, all of these ways of understanding a cow would cohere with my world and my culture and the way that I view the world and with all of my experiences. So, we might talk about some very basic assumptions in correspondence theories and coherence theories. So, correspondence theories can be viewed as objectivist. That means it's really focused on the object and that the meaning of something is really inherent in that object. It's dependent on the object or the phenomenon. So, if I point to a cow and somebody else doesn't understand it as a cow, then I might say, well, look at it. It's a cow. You can see it. You can touch it. It says moo, all of those things. And if you don't understand that, then you're wrong, right? So the idea is that the meaning here resides in the object. So from this view, correspondence theories are really concerned with what things are and what they mean and determining those things. And there's pretty much just one truth about those things. So a cow is a cow is a cow. This means several things for literacy, teaching, and learning. So if we were to move beyond the cow and we were to move instead to the notion of what a reader does when she's reading or what a writer does when he's trying to spell, we could say from a correspondence theory perspective that a reader understands the text if she can recall or reproduce the information so that it matches or corresponds with what the text says. And with the example of spelling, we would say that a writer, from a correspondence theory perspective, a writer's spelling should match the ideal or correct form. In other words, it would correspond to it. But coherence theories view these things differently. So instead of an objectivist frame, coherence theories operate from more of a constructivist frame. And another way of thinking about that is rather than focusing on the object, meaning focuses on the subject. So what that means is that meaning is dependent on the meaning maker. Those of you who have an interest in grammar might note that when we think about the object of a sentence, it's the thing, but when we think about the subject of a sentence, it's somebody who does something, right? So with objectivist theories or correspondence theories, the focus is on the object or the phenomenon. But with constructivist theories and coherence theories, meaning is really dependent on the meaning maker, or the person. So in this sense, coherence theories are concerned with not what things are and what they mean, but rather how we make sense of things. And there's an understanding that how we make sense of things and how we understand things is contextualized. It depends on our experiences and who we are, where we live, our contexts. So if we were to then take this again away from the cow metaphor and to start thinking about literacy, teaching, and learning, we could say that from a coherence theory perspective, a reader understands the text if it makes sense or fits with her prior understandings and experiences. And similarly, if we were to look at spelling, we could say that a writer's spelling should make sense given what he knows about letters and sounds. So note that from a correspondence theory perspective, there's really one way of understanding a text, and there's one way of spelling a word. But from a coherence theory perspective, there's not necessarily one way to understand a text. How we understand a text is going to differ depending on our perspective and our context, our ways of viewing the world, much like our understanding of a cow would differ. And same thing with spelling. So with correspondence theories, there's one way to spell a word such as cake. C-A-K-E. And we know that's the conventional spelling. But if we were going to adhere to coherence theories, we would say, well, okay, cake, C-A-K-E, corresponds with what I know as an adult, fluent reader and writer, and what I know about what the silent E does to the vowel sound. But if my knowledge were not quite as sophisticated regarding letters and sounds, and what I knew was that C makes a K sound, and A makes an A sound, and C makes a K sound, I could spell cake C-A-C. And that would make sense to me given what I know about letters and sounds. So those are the primary differences in the basic assumptions between correspondence and coherence theories. In chapters 3 and 4, you're going to be reading about two different kinds of coherence theories. And both of these coherence theories really are trying to get at how people make meaning, how they make sense of what's around them. So in chapter 3, you'll be reading about cognitive constructivist coherence theories. From this view, meaning making is an individual cognitive or in the head process. In chapter 4, you're going to be reading about social constructivist theories. And as the word social implies, from this view, meaning making is a social process. And what that means is it's not an individual or independent process. It's something that happens in our interactions with others in social contexts. As you're going through the readings this week, and you're getting a little bit confused as to how these theories understand teaching and learning and literacy differently from correspondence theories, feel free to come back and revisit this video. It might also help you, prior to reading chapters 3 and 4, to go back and look really quickly and kind of scan over chapter 2 so that, particularly the part at the beginning of that chapter that talks about correspondence theories, and that'll make that a little bit fresher in your mind to be able to contrast with coherence theories. You've got a variety of activities coming up in this unit. In addition to reading chapters 3 and 4, I've got a few different videos for you to view and think about. You'll also be analyzing some videos in your groups, and you'll also be participating in the discussion forum. I hope you find this unit interesting, and as always, please email me if you have any questions or concerns.